Every massive system has to start somewhere. For the Roman Empire, that meant a violent turf war on a marshy riverbank in 753 BC. They drained the swamps and laid the first stone foundations of what would eventually become the Roman Forum. They even wrote this grit into their origin story. According to legend, Rome was founded by Romulus and Remus, twins raised by a she-wolf. Romulus eventually killed his brother over where to build the city, setting an aggressive tone from day one. They chose their location carefully. Building the city across 7 hills provided a significant tactical advantage. Early Romans held the high ground, allowing them to spot invading tribes from miles away. As they grew, the Romans integrated external software into their own culture. They learned how to build stone arches from neighboring Etruscan kings, and eventually adopted their purple robes as symbols of power, proving early on that Roman strength was built on cultural absorption. By 509 BC, the Romans realized a single king was a single point of failure. When they finally ousted Tarquin the Proud, they rebooted their entire government. They split executive power among elected officials, creating the Roman Republic. To keep the elite from changing the rules to exploit the commoners, they carved their laws into 12 bronze tablets. This made the rules transparent for the first time. These established a legal framework so stable, it serves as the root directory for civil legal systems in Europe and South America today. Codifying these laws didn't end internal conflict overnight, but it provided a shared operating system for resolving it. This legislative base gave the state enough internal structure to shift its focus from survival to aggressive expansion. As Rome began to scale, they rarely had the largest army. Their military dominance came from an obsessive focus on adaptation. This illustrates their main tactical advantage. While Greek armies used a massive, rigid phalanx that fell apart on rough ground, the Roman legion was built as modular units. They could break into smaller groups to cross uneven terrain, then instantly snap back into tight formation. When they fought Carthage during the Punic Wars, Rome didn't even have a navy, so they found a wrecked enemy ship, reverse-engineered its design, and built a fleet of 100 warships in just 60 days. Even when the Carthaginian general Hannibal marched elephants across the Alps and wiped out 3 entire Roman armies, the Republic refused to surrender. They absorbed massive casualties, drafted more men, and kept fighting. This stubborn resilience forged the city into an expansion machine. By surviving the system disruptions of Carthage and Hannibal, Rome proved it could absorb catastrophic losses and iterate its way to total Mediterranean dominance. Holding a global territory together required a physical infrastructure as robust as the legions themselves. The Romans laid down over 80,000 kilometers of solid paved roads. Built with a multi-layered architecture of sand, gravel, and precisely cut stone, these routes acted as the ancient equivalent of a fiber optic network, moving legions and tax data across the continent at record speeds. Their engineers achieved this durability by mixing volcanic ash with lime. This chemical combination created Roman concrete, a material so robust that many structures remain completely intact 2 millennia later. To keep their booming cities alive, they built massive aqueducts. Using nothing but the strict physics of gravity, these stone channels transported a constant stream of fresh water from mountains dozens of miles away directly into the urban centers. They managed the economics of this vast territory using deep data collection. Regular census counts tracked every citizen and farm, while standardizing on a single silver coin, the denarius, allowed merchants from Spain to Syria to seamlessly trade within one synced global market. This intense interconnectedness generated staggering wealth for Rome. However, pumping that much money into the system exposed deep structural flaws that their political hardware was never designed to handle. As riches flooded the capital, the elite bought up all the farmland, pushing millions of commoners into poverty. When politicians tried to patch this wealth gap through legislation, they were assassinated in the streets. Lilands became the new political currency. To keep the impoverished citizens from rioting, leaders invested heavily in entertainment hardware. Massive stadiums hosted brutal daily spectacles, operating as a calculated social mechanism to distract the public and keep the city from overheating. The fatal error came from the military. Desperate for recruits, generals began promising land and salaries directly to poor citizens. Soldiers realized their paychecks came from their commanders, shifting their loyalty away from the Roman state and creating heavily armed private factions. Julius Caesar exploited this exact vulnerability. Backed by highly trained legions loyal only to him, he marched on Rome, crossed the Rubicon River, and bypassed the Senate entirely, effectively deleting the Republic's operating rules. After decades of bloody civil war, his grandnephew Augustus finally emerged victorious. He kept the visual aesthetics of the Republic, the Senate, the voting, that held all actual power himself, launching an autocratic system that kicked off 200 years of relative peace. Centralizing power into the hands of one emperor temporarily resolved the internal chaos, yet it hardwired a dangerous flaw into Rome's DNA. Whenever a weak or erratic leader took the throne, the entire empire suffered the consequences. Eventually, the system simply grew too large to process. Realizing they had reached their maximum manageable footprint, emperors like Hadrian made the pragmatic choice to stop expanding and build massive physical firewalls to shield what they already controlled. In its final centuries, a cascading series of issues overwhelmed the system. Decades of elite bodyguard assassinations, runaway currency inflation, constant pressure of invading tribes, compounded perhaps by lead poisoning from their own plumbing, finally forced the Western Empire offline in 476 AD. The political structure fell, but the underlying data survived the collapse. Engineering marvels like the vast concrete dome of the Pantheon remained intact, while the rigorous text of Roman civil law was preserved by the Eastern Empire in Byzantium. Rome remains the master template for human ambition. Today, the concrete engineering and legal codes developed 2,000 years ago continue to run the essential hardware of modern civilization.